Know thyself. This short piece of wisdom speaks to the lifelong process of coming to understand the nuances of one's personhood, including one's faults and weaknesses, and then acting in a way that is mindful of this self-knowledge. The maxim was famously inscribed on the Temple of Apollo at Delphi, to which, in ancient times, people would travel to receive prophecies about their lives. This wisdom still applies today, though one need not pilgrimage to the site of an ancient oracle to live its truth. Haruki Murakami's The Colorless Tsukuro Tazaki and His Years of Pilgrimage tells the story of Tsukuro Tazaki, a 36-year-old engineer who builds and maintains train stations in Tokyo, Japan. Though successful at work, Tsukuro does not yet know himself. Past trauma and personal inhibition hold him back from forging meaningful connections with other people. Throughout the novel, Tsukuro undertakes a pilgrimage that is both physical and mental. While he travels to Nagoya in Finland, his main journey occurs in his mind, where he must relive past events, piecing them together like a puzzle, and attempt to make sense of his memory's gaps. By merging the philosophical call for self-knowledge with the psychological call for self-care, Murakami paints a unique philosophy of healing that envisions philosophical discovery as psychological recovery. The catalyst of Tsukuro's quest is Sarah, the articulate career woman whom Tsukuro has begun to date. Despite their chemistry, Sarah senses in Tsukuro a mental block that limits his ability to connect. During conversation, Sarah uses the Socratic method, whereby one asks strategic questions to guide the respondent to a truth buried within the self. Many psychologists use the Socratic method with their patients, and Sarah shares these psychologists' therapeutic goals. The truth she wants Tsukuro to realize is the truth about his trauma. To move forward in his relationship, he must confront old wounds and piece together the narrative of his life. Tsukuro used to be very sick. From July of his sophomore year in college until the following January, all Tsukuro Tazaki could think about was dying. When he was a 20-year-old college student, his 4 best friends from high school suddenly cut off contact with him. Never asking why, Tsukuro fell into a deep depression, losing weight, having nightmares, and wanting to die. He eventually escapes despair, but his pain remains. He continues to experience low self-esteem, anxiety, and dissociation, disconnecting from his thoughts, feelings, and memories. For this reason, Sarah prompts him to reconnect with his old friends, the colorful 4 whose departure dimmed his life's light. The 4 old friends, whose names have colored associations, are Ao, the jovial jock, Aka, the innovative nerd, Kuro, the creative comedian, and Shiro, the sensitive pianist. Compared to his friends, Tsukuro felt colorless, both in name and personality. Yet as he'll learn, each of his friends has struggled, most of all Shiro, who suffered rape and then, at the age of 30, was murdered. Tsukuro travels from Tokyo to Nagoya. First he visits Ao, now a car salesman, who receives him with surprise and goodwill. From Ao, Tsukuro finally learns why the group cut him off. Shiro, also called Yuzu, told the others that Tsukuro raped her. Though the friends didn't fully believe her, they took her side to protect her. "You had a public face and a hidden private face," she said. "You had a dark hidden side, something unhinged and detached from the side of you that everyone knew." While the novel makes it clear, I think, that Tsukuro did not assault Shiro, it does suggest there's a darkness within him, for Tsukuro later concludes to himself, what he did know was that inside Yuzu, too, lay a deep inner darkness, and that somewhere, on some subterranean level, her darkness and his may have connected. Tsukuro's journey of self-discovery involves, in part, coming to terms with this inner darkness, or shadow self. Next, Tsukuro visits Aka, a wildly successful entrepreneur. Aka reiterates much of what Ao has said, sprinkling in some of his own maxims. As we go through life, we gradually discover who we are, but the more we discover, the more we lose ourselves. Ao confesses his own struggle with self-knowledge, including the discovery of himself as a closeted gay man. This confession helps Tsukuro realize he's far from being the only person dealing with insecurities. Tsukuro's pilgrimage culminates in Finland, where he travels to see Kuro, who now goes by Iri. Like the others, she has a relatively good life, making pottery and raising 2 daughters with her husband. Initially shocked to see Tsukuro, Iri goes on to tell him about Shiro. She affirms that Shiro was assaulted, becoming pregnant and suffering a miscarriage. She grew weaker and developed an eating disorder, before finally being strangled to death. This all took a horrible toll on Iri, who looks to the spirit world for explanation. An evil spirit possessed her, Iri said softly, as if revealing a secret. It clung to her, breathing coldly on her neck, slowly driving her in a corner. At the end of the day, neither Zukuro nor Eri know what happened to Shiro. While much of Zukuro's pilgrimage involves piecing together his life's narrative, part of it is acknowledging the gaps in his understanding. As with the disappearance of his old college friend, Haida, a side mystery that accompanies the main mystery surrounding Shiro, Zukuro may never know the truth of what happened. And yet, he has grown. Throughout his pilgrimage, Zukuro has learned not only what happened with the old group, but also what one needs to grow as a person, to confront issues rather than avoiding them, and to connect with others rather than dwelling in alienation. Having shared their vulnerability, Zukuro and Eri embrace. Zukuro learns people are linked through heartbreak. One heart is not connected to another through harmony alone. They are, instead, linked deeply through their wounds. Pain linked to pain, fragility to fragility. This knowledge frees Zukuro to embrace his self-worth. He is not the empty person he thought he was. Or at least, he is not empty in the sense that he lacks character. But he is empty in the sense that, throughout his life, he has given others a sort of breathing room in which they can be themselves. As Ao has told him, "You didn't say much, but you had your feet solidly planted on the ground." And that gave the group a sense of security, like an anchor. We saw that more clearly when you weren't with us anymore. Like the space of a bowl that allows the bowl to hold liquid, or like the space of a station that allows trains to stop inside it, Zukuro had been a stable vessel for his friends to coexist. When they exiled him from the group, it inevitably collapsed. But though things collapse, Zukuro is a maker. Being receptive to the world and others is an important first step. But, as Eri reminds him, he must also act. This action takes great courage, as one must act in spite of one's pain. Never let fear and stupid pride make you lose someone who's precious to you, Eri tells Zukuro, prompting him to pursue Sarah, whom he may lose to another man. Eri gives him what I think is the most important insight of the novel, effectively telling him to create the blueprint of his life, then to work to make it happen. She relays this wisdom in words that befit his nature. First things first, build the station, a special station just for her. The kind of station where trains want to stop, even if they have no reason to do so. Imagine that kind of station, and give it actual color and shape. Write your name on the foundation with a nail, and breathe life into it. Now that Zukuro has traveled the course of his pilgrimage, he may return home to forge a destination. By confronting old friends, he has come to understand not only his alienation and emotional paralysis, but also his capacity for reconnection and imaginative action. He remarks near the end of the novel that, if Sarah doesn't choose him, he might die. But I don't think that's the case. I think he's proven himself to be resilient, and even if she rejects him, I think he'll be okay. Perhaps recognition of that resilience is the next step in his journey, for self-discovery is a lifelong process, and while Zukuro has learned enough to build his imaginative stations, he may continue to travel in wisdom. His story breathes new life into the saying that life's about the journey, not the destination. The philosophical destination, the truth gleaned, is not a static insight, but rather an ongoing initiative to heal and to grow. Like the trains that traverse Tokyo's tracks, like the classical music that carries on after Shiro's death, and like hope itself that, as Zukuro realizes at the novel's close, never dies, the philosophical truth about self-knowledge, like the mysterious fluctuations of life itself, continues on and on.